Hi everyone, welcome to Talking Mental Health. This is episode number 16 with me, Joe, and today I'm joined by Patrick. How are you, Pat?
Hi Joe, yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. So just for a bit of background for everybody, Pat and I went to primary school together, and we went to high school together as well. So yeah, we've probably known each other, 25 years, something like that.
25 years, I guess. Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's flown by.
I know, but it only seems like yesterday when you see St. Joe's and you go past BTH, and it doesn't seem that long ago, does it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem long ago at all. But I know it's very different now at BTH from when we were there. They've got a college there and everything now.
Yeah, much bigger school than what we were used to anyway. So how's life been this year, mate? I know it's been a strange year for everyone. What's it been like for you from sort of March onwards?
Yeah, it's been strange. Obviously, it's obviously affected the work I do because I work as a counsellor. So all of the work I'm doing at the moment is kind of remote. So we over the telephone. Some video work, but limited, to be honest. Most of it is over the telephone. So that's been an adjustment, which at first I thought would be a difficult adjustment, but has turned out to actually be quite good, to be honest. To be honest, I've started to think that I actually prefer doing the counselling over the telephone to the face to face in a lot of ways. So, and I get to work from home, which I actually quite enjoy. So,
I was going to say, have you been working from home the whole time?
Yeah, I was actually going to start working again face to face recently. They did start up some work with like measures in place, but I decided sort of last minute against it because I don't know, really, it's still all a bit uncertain, and like there was no promise of that continuing sort of long term. So at the last minute, I changed my mind. So yeah, I've been working from home exclusively really since March.
And is that going to carry on now for the next 4 weeks plus, maybe?
Definitely, yeah. I would imagine definitely until like sort of next year. I can't see it changing now really. But like I say, I've actually enjoyed working over the telephone. There's a lot of advantages for clients that I work with, because they get to work from home. Well, not work from home, but they get to do the sessions from home. They can be more comfortable. So yeah, it's been odd in terms of my own sort of personal journey. I do live on my own, so I spend a lot of time on my own anyway. But it like when lockdown first came, it was quite it was difficult in a lot of ways. I got quite badly ill at one point in May, I think, like physically ill. I don't know if I actually went and got tested for the virus, but it turned out it wasn't COVID-19. But it was quite bad, and like I didn't really have anyone there to sort of help me or whatever, so it was a bit of a struggle, to be honest. My parents, who live in Sale up the road, they kind of came and helped out and stuff, but yeah, it was tough. But apart from that, it's been fairly like normal for me because I'm used to living on my own. I'm used to being on my own a lot.
Yeah. Bit different though, because you're a big Man United fan, aren't you? I know you go to a lot of the games, do you?
Yeah. Actually, the last game. So I went to there was a City game like the week before lockdown, I think, or maybe it was just before lockdown. And I remember going to that game and it being pretty strange, to be honest. Like there was an air of like sort of anxiety in the air. I always remember feeling that there was a bit of a sense that something was about to happen. Not in terms of the football, in terms of the. But we did end up winning that game, so we went out on a high. So that was good at least.
Yeah, it's been a big adjustment for everybody, hasn't it? So, like you said, you live alone, and you're quite comfortable doing that. Has it been weird not having the sort of freedom to go out when you want to, as opposed to normally when you can just come and go as you please?
Yeah, yeah, it has been strange, I mean, I kind of, whenever the rules changed and you could kind of meet up with people, I formed like a social bubble, I guess, with my parents and my brother who was living with my parents. So it got a bit easier at that point, like I'm sure it did for everyone. And I started playing quite a lot of golf, just meeting up with friends here and there and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it was strange and difficult to adjust to, but yeah, I feel like I'm quite lucky, to be honest, in a lot of ways. So I don't really like to complain about it.
I've noticed online on your social media, you do quite a lot of running as well, don't you?
Yeah, well, no, actually, I started doing running, I think last week. I was just doing a bit of sprinting down at Media City, but I've had a pretty bad ankle injury, for the past 2 years. So I've been quite debilitated in what I can actually do. I used to play a lot of football, and yeah, I stopped playing, I think, in 2018, maybe start 2018, and I haven't been able to play football since. So that was really tough, like sort of getting used to not being able to do that, because that was quite a big thing. I'd play like every week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've started doing a bit more, but it's not good for me. That day doing the sprinting has actually probably set me back quite a lot in terms of my ankle injury. So
Better get yourself down doing the open swim at Media City then instead.
I've seen him doing it. Yeah, I'm not a very strong swimmer, to be honest, Joe.
No.
So yeah, so,
No, I don't think I can
well,
swim, but I don't think I would swim in the water down there. It doesn't look clean enough for me.
oh, that's it as well. Yeah, there's always litter sort of hanging around. Yeah, it doesn't look particularly enticing to me.
Yeah,
Definitely not. I don't mind watching them.
quite grimy. It's a nice area, but I don't think I would ever go swimming down there. So you talked just like a couple of minutes ago about counselling and stuff. Do you want to just give us a little insight into what it is that you actually do, without giving too much away with your clients and stuff, just sort of the day to day, or how you kind of go about your work?
Yeah, so I work for an IAPT service, NHS IAPT service. So IAPT stands for Improving Access to Psychological Therapies, and is like an NHS initiative to try and get better access to people who need talking therapies for usually common mental health problems like depression and anxiety. So originally, I was working at a service in Huddersfield when I qualified. So I qualified in 2018, started 2018. I started working at a service in Huddersfield. I was there for about a year, but it was a big commute, really. Like I live in Eccles, and it was taking me like 45 minutes to drive there or whatever. So yeah, decided to try and find something a bit closer to home. And now I work for a company called Big Life Group, who are like a charity. It's a charity involved in the Big Issue as well, selling the Big Issue. And the NHS portion off a lot of the IAPT work to like different charities, and one of the charities is the Big Life Group, and that's who I'm working for. I started working for them, so I started in February actually. So like I had about a month there, and then I was working from home, so it was a bit strange really, because I didn't get to know people particularly well. I don't really know any of my colleagues, and I've been working there now for best part of this year. So but yeah, I'm waffling on a bit, but yeah, I don't know. So I work with common mental health problems, like I say, so depression, anxiety, usually more depression presentations, to be honest, because CBT would usually be recommended for anxiety disorders. And we do, so in this service, we do 6 sessions, so it's very short-term work, and it's for moderate presentations of depression, so not the more severe levels, because you have to work with them kind of clients longer term. So yeah, I work with these clients for 6 sessions. We've been doing it all over the telephone or by video. It's up to the client what they do. Invariably, they usually choose telephone work. And yeah, I've been doing that since March, really. So yeah.
So would that, in normal times, would they have the option of doing that face to face as well, or would it still be over the telephone as it is at the moment?
Yeah, so I was working face to face when I started the work in February, and and we work at various places. Like they rent rooms from different places. I was working in a school, a room in a school, and yeah, it would usually be face to face. And that's why I think I was just saying to you before, like, I thought it was going to be a really strange and difficult adjustment to work over the telephone, because I've never worked as a counsellor over the telephone, and I don't really like speaking to people on the telephone particularly. Like, it's just not something I'm particularly comfortable with, because you can't really read like body language and that kind of thing, so which can be a big part of therapy. But yeah, in terms of the work itself, since working over the telephone, it's actually been very beneficial in a lot of ways, both to the client and I would say actually to myself as well in a lot of ways. So I feel like we've worked and had some really good outcomes with a lot of the clients.
That's good. That's positive. I just wanted to ask, you said earlier in that piece about talking therapies. Can you just explain talking therapies a little bit? Because I've heard of it, but I don't know enough about it to be able to tell someone what it actually is from my point of view.
I mean, talking therapies, I guess, is a blanket term for all of the different modalities of so there's counselling, and even within counselling, there's a lot of different modalities, they would say. So there's person-centered counselling, which is a very traditional form of counselling, which was like originated from Carl Rogers, the American psychologist. And then there's CBT. You may have heard of CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy. And that's still classed as a talking therapy, but it's very different in its approach. It's very prescriptive, like, so they would sort of work with the client on particular anxiety disorders and say, right, go away and do this, work with challenging certain thoughts and that kind of thing. They're just two examples, though, of talking therapies. There's hundreds more, but obviously not got time to sit here and list them all. But yeah, they're the two main ones.
Are you trained in both of those?
No, well, actually, I'm trained as an integrative counsellor, so I'm trained actually to bring in whatever modality of counselling that I see as being fit to use. So I do, or have been known to use some kind of CBT techniques in my work, but largely I work in a kind of person-centered way. It really depends on the client, like that, and that's the idea of integrative counselling, to tailor the way I work to the presentation, like to the client. And yeah, with these 6 sessions, like working with clients for 6 sessions, which isn't a lot of time, you have to work in quite a solution-focused way. So you can't really just sort of let it drift. You have to make sure that there's a focus to the work and that the client's kind of sticking with that focus. So you have to be more directive, I suppose.
That's super interesting. So I was going to ask you, with that sort of counselling, obviously, without breaking any confidentiality or anything like that, what kind of things are people coming to you with or saying about their depression? Like sort of, I guess I'm asking, what kind of causes are most common among people that you deal with? Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, of course. It's not an easy question to answer, really, in terms of like what's most common, because there is obviously many things that people would come with. And in terms of triggers, I suppose you could say bereavement is always a trigger, and people losing loved ones and people losing jobs. So loss as a sort of collective thing. So people losing things that are very important to them. That's often a trigger for people coming to counselling. But it's complicated because people can develop these sort of things, like, if you want to call them depression and anxiety, at quite a young age, and maybe not really know what they are, and then perhaps live through sort of a period of their lives where they just become used to it, and then they get to a certain point and it's like, actually, I can't really cope with this anymore, like I need to seek help, like this is. And there's symptoms, I suppose, of depression, like lack of motivation, being unable to sleep is a big one, appetite being affected, that kind of thing, and just feeling bad about yourself, like that's often like a big reason people would come for counselling.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you were saying about is it 6 sessions or 6 weeks, or is it the same thing, like 6 weeks, one session a week that you work?
Usually, yeah. Usually it's weekly. Some clients do opt to do bi-weekly, fortnightly sessions. So yeah, that's not as common, but it can be like that.
And is that the limit that you guys work in? Is that the time frame that you have? You've got 6 weeks or 6 sessions to work with us, and then you're on to something else, or you kind of back to just the other way?
Yeah. Well, we do assessments as well, and that's part of my job, to do assessments of people coming into the service, and we decide from there whether they need longer term treatment, and in that case we would step them up to higher intensity treatment, or they can stay in our service and just work with a counsellor or low intensity CBT practitioner for 6 sessions. But yeah, we can extend to 8 sessions in some circumstances as well, so it's not set in stone. Like you just having the 6 sessions and then we'll see where you're at, kind of thing. Also, I should probably say, in our service there was groups as well, so you could refer them for group therapy. Not group therapy as such, but like groups that deal with other people struggling with a similar sort of presentation, like anxiety or depression, being the examples I got. Yeah.
Makes sense. And do you see a range of people? Because part of the reason I started this was because I wanted to try and open up the conversation more about men talking about mental health. But then, last few weeks I've changed that and introduced women as well.
Yeah.
Do you see people from different ages, different backgrounds, different races, or is there a common?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, some of the clients in our service don't speak English, and we have interpreters. So we work, which is, I mean, that's quite rare actually. But I've done a lot of assessments with interpreters, which can be a bit strange in a lot of ways. But yeah, ages so it's adults, so it's anywhere from 18 upwards. But I've worked with. That's the amazing thing about counselling, really, that you do just work with such a variety of people. I've worked with children. I mean, I've worked in primary schools as well, which I was talking about before. So I've worked with ages from probably 5, all the way up to 8. I think I had a client who was like 82. So, work with basically the full lifespan, basically.
Yeah, you work with everybody. So you mentioned the primary school there. What sort of stuff were you doing in the primary school with the kids?
Yeah, so obviously that's different. So I was basically just winging it, to be honest, because I hadn't worked with primary school children before. I got the job because I worked at a charity. When I was training, you have to get a certain amount of hours, and I was on a placement at this charity, and they basically just designate counsellors who they think may work well in certain areas, and I was designated to work with these primary school children at a couple of schools up near Oldham. And yeah, we do like play therapy, basically. So you work with like materials. They'll be doing drawing and painting, but trying to talk to them at the same time, like see what's going on for them. It obviously depends on age as well. Like I was working with 11-year-olds who could talk quite well about what was happening for them and that kind of thing. And then you've got the like 5 and 6-year-olds who obviously aren't going to be able to articulate as well about what's happening for them. So it's more like getting them to draw pictures and maybe do a bit of sort of acting out certain things. But yeah, I'm no expert in play therapy. I was sort of learning it along the way, really.
I wanted to ask you actually, because you mentioned before about your training. What's the process, or what's the time frame that you have to go through in order to become a qualified counsellor to the point that you're at right now?
Well, I started my training in 2013. So what I did was you have to do like a postgraduate certificate in counselling skills. There's various ways you can train to be a counsellor, actually, but I'll just tell you about my journey. So I did a postgraduate certificate at the University of Salford in 2013, and that's like a 6-month basic training in counselling. And then once you've got that certificate, you can go on to do a full diploma or degree in counselling, like full training. So 2013, I did the postgraduate certificate, and then 2014, I started my master's in counselling at Manchester University. That was integrative counselling, which is what I ended up training in. but it took me 4 years to get all of the hours. So as well as the learn sort of stuff, you have to get 150 practice hours to actually qualify. So that was start of 2018. I qualified, and then started working pretty much straight after that.
So it's a fair journey then. Obviously, you know, it's important that you go on the journey and you learn everything that you need to know, but it's quite a long process.
Yeah, it is, and it's also what I would say about it is it's in terms of personally, it's a big commitment, because you, being a counsellor, you have to be very aware of your own difficulties, your own fears, perhaps your own processes, as they would say. So, like, you go through a lot of your own kind of personal stuff throughout that journey, and it's grueling. Like, it is really grueling, to be honest. Especially if it's quite difficult for you to maybe talk about difficulties that are going on for you, and to some extent, I think if you're not used to it, for anyone, it is difficult. So yeah, it's a long process and it's a grueling process, but it's intended that way to vet out sort of people who maybe aren't, I guess, cut out for it. Or I'm making it sound like marine training here or something, but it's not quite that.
Yeah, they break you down and build you back up again to be a counselor. Yeah, no, but it sounds intense, and obviously, you know, there's a lot. I guess there's a lot to learn, and they put you in a position where if you're comfortable talking about yourself and opening up, then you can encourage others to do the same. Was that something that you were prepared for? Did you know that was part of the process, or was that a bit of a surprise when that came up?
I kind of knew, but without actually doing it, you really can't really know just how grueling a process it can be, really. So I wouldn't say I was fully prepared for it, but yeah, like I did have some idea from talking to other counsellors who'd already been through the process, and yeah, I'd say I had some idea, but like it was still a lot of it was quite shocking in terms of how difficult it is, I suppose.
Go on. Can I ask you what sort of stuff you had to do, or what's they put you through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm making it sound like maybe, like I say, like it's really hardcore or something, but I suppose that the most difficult thing is something that they would call personal development groups, where you would sit kind of in a circle of about 6 people, and you'd have a facilitator there, and this would be at the end of every session, at end of every sort of day. So we only did 1 day a week. It was like 7 hours a week, so it was part-time training. But you would sit there for an hour and a half, and without actually, it's very difficult to describe what personal development groups are like, but it's 6 people kind of sat there, and you know, we're not talking about the weather or football, or you know, people talking about like their feelings, basically what's come up for them that day. But just the power of like 6 people being in that situation, and then starting to talk in that really genuine and kind of honest way, it can open up the floodgates for some quite intense like sort of stuff, really. So just thinking back, I mean, that was really where a lot of the learning came for me, like and it's pretty amazing, really, because like I say, that isn't a situation you would ever find in everyday life. It's a very unique situation. So yeah, like you would end up kind of sort of all sat there at times getting very emotional, and people would become angry at times, and you would have to sort of contain that. It was pretty it was pretty intense stuff, I would say. Yeah.
So what made you go into counselling in the first place? Because I don't know. I mean, I look at counselling and think that's a calling. It's not for everybody. Like
Yeah.
a lot of jobs. Was that something that you always wanted to do, or is it something you kind of fell into, or had an experience of, you know, mental health struggles yourself, or you thought, you know what, I want to be on the other side of that and support people as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's it exactly. It was my own sort of struggles with mental health. So, like, I would say I probably struggled with various kind of mental health issues, probably from the age of about 12. But in my early 20s, coming out of university was difficult, and then coming out of university was particularly tough. And I actually had CBT myself when I was 20, probably 22, for like anxiety. Really, I had a lot of generalized anxiety, but also quite severe social anxiety. And that, like, I had the CBT then. I think I had 12 sessions of CBT. But to be honest, if I think back to it now, I wasn't really in a place where I could properly engage in therapy. Like, it was really difficult. And I found CBT in itself to be not particularly helpful to me, to be honest, if I think back. But it was around then that I was sort of thinking, what am I going to do? Because I was just working at the bank. I just finished my degree in philosophy, and I was working at the bank. Didn't really want to be doing that. It was just kind of like, oh, this is what people are doing. They're just getting a job. And so then I started to think, oh, well, you know, I like working with people one-to-one. I was thinking about my own experience, CBT. And then, I think it was probably around 2012 that I started thinking that I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna train as a counsellor. But it was definitely my own experiences that led me to that point, I would say.
So with your social anxiety, was that something that you were aware of, I think you said from the age of 12 onwards, or was it something that you just thought you were quite a shy person? What was that experience like for yourself?
Yeah, at school, I don't know really. Like, it's weird. It's very difficult to pinpoint, I guess. I say the age of 12 because that age was quite tough for me, because I went to the same school as you, like we were saying, but all of my siblings went to a different school. They went to St. Bede's, and that's really where I wanted to go, really, because obviously my siblings were there, and I didn't get in. I didn't pass the exam to get in, so that was tough. I guess I didn't really fully realize at the time, but when I look back now, it was definitely tough. So that was the start of some issues. In terms of the social thing, I don't know where it materialized from, really. I would say probably more college, like when I noticed that, and then through university, I definitely had some problems with that.
But you came out the other end. Are you still dealing with that to a point?
Yeah, like I say, I spent a lot of time on my own, but yeah, I mean, I'm definitely. It's a lot different now to what it was when I was in my 20s, in my early 20s. So it's something that I've really worked on, and perhaps that process of myself working on my own difficulties, my own anxieties, has put me in a place perhaps where I can more easily or more effectively empathize with clients who are perhaps going through their own struggles. I would definitely say that has helped me in my profession without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I think if you can relate to what they're going through in some way, shape, or form, and I'm not saying it makes your job easier, but it makes you understand more and to be able to, I guess, choose the right path for them.
Yeah, I think like the one other thing I would say is that you have to be careful not to assume that somebody is experiencing things the same way that you are as well. Like, empathy is about really, I mean, I don't need to tell you this, but empathy is really trying to as much as is possible, put yourself in the other person's shoes. So, and that's not easy to do. It's easy to say, like, but it is very difficult to do, because we only really have our own experience to go by. We can't really properly understand what it's like to have somebody else's thoughts or feelings. So, you have to be careful, but it's still just the process of struggling with something and going through something which was a struggle. It's allowed me to have maybe more patience and be able to listen at a deeper level than perhaps other people would be able to. I don't know.
It's interesting. Yeah, I can sort of understand. And as I'm listening to you talk, it sounds like there's a lot of sort of crossover between counselling and coaching.
Yeah.
I'm
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because you said before about having something to work towards, which is obviously one of the big things with coaching is, you know, setting goals and having something to aim for. And then, you know, you're talking about, you know, that process of, you know, facilitating a conversation and not assuming you know what they're thinking, trying to, you know, ask the right questions or guide as much as possible. So yeah, it does sound like there's a lot of crossover. Did you, as you said before, like you went, when you went through the training and you did those sessions with 6 other people, did you learn a lot about yourself during that training?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. Like I say, the process of going through that, it's difficult to really put into words how transformative it is, really. But yeah, I learned so much about myself, like, without a doubt.
Can I ask what are you?
I
Was it, or was there one particular
don't
thing?
know how good I am at. Well, I'm not very good at putting my finger on these things particularly, but what did I learn about myself? Without really sitting and properly thinking about it, I probably can't give you a very good answer, but I know that I definitely did.
Mm.
I suppose, like, more than anything, I learned that it's okay to feel something. I learned to have a lot more compassion for myself, which is really what the process of counselling is about. You know, trying to harbour that or cultivate that in other people, and learning to accept myself, like learning to accept that I'm not perfect, like I do have flaws and difficulties, um, and that's okay. You know, everybody does. You know, it's part of being human. So even though I suppose it sounds like quite obvious when you say it, but actually that is a really difficult thing to actually properly feel. Like it's easy to say it and think it maybe, but you really have to kind of feel it. And going through that process on the counselling course definitely changed a lot of that for me.
That's so interesting. I mean, I've learned a lot about myself over the last few years, and you know that it's okay to have flaws and it's okay to feel a certain way and you know be a certain way, and we are who we are, and we can't really change that, and we don't need to be something we're not to what's the right word, to kind of please the people that are around us and to you know have the friends that we have. You just have to be yourself, and that's enough. And I think that's one thing that's so important, and a message that especially with young people, you know, I do a lot of work with young people and trying to give them that message that you don't have to look a certain way or dress a certain way or talk a certain way to be important and to be enough, because as you are is just enough. So I think that's an interesting thing that you said, that just, you know, you discovered a bit more about yourself, and that you did have flaws that you probably knew about anyway, but you never really, I guess, accepted them.
Yeah, or face them maybe, you know, as much as you're kind of confronted with that stuff as part of that process. And the process of counseling, you're confronted with a lot of that stuff, and you really need to be ready as a client to work with that and really face it, because you know, if you don't, if you do things that I mean, a lot of people use, there's so many things that you can use in today's world which can distract you from like your facing your fears or facing your demons, if you like, or something. And really, if you really want to properly engage in counseling, it's not easy. Like it's a very difficult process, but it's a very rewarding process as well. So having gone through that myself, it really puts me in a place where I can really just try and, like you say, encourage and to just be honest as much as possible with clients, which allows them to maybe do the same, hopefully do the same. But yeah, like it's an amazing sort of you can have some amazing experiences through this job, definitely.
Yeah, you actually mentioned the word I was going to ask you. You know, you said there it's rewarding. I guess you get to see over that 6 weeks some sort of transformation, some sort of change within the people that
Yeah.
you work with. Not necessarily at the moment because you're talking over the phone and you can't really see them, like you said before. But I guess when you're doing it face to face, you can see that progression and that journey that they go on from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, it can be unbelievable. I suppose the one example I would always give, which was the most amazing experience that I've had in counselling, um, and obviously I'm not giving away much, but just the actual presentation of what came from the client. There was a guy who was in his sort of late 50s, and he'd had some like sexual abuse when he was young, when he was a kid, when he was like, I think 6 or 7, and he'd never talked to anybody about it, and it just affected his life from that point onwards, you know, to the point where he was dealing with all sorts of things like anger management, and but him just talking about that with me in those sessions completely transformed his life, you know. He was like a different person by the end of it. And you know, he couldn't believe how much, just by talking about something which he kept inside for that long, made such a difference to his life. Because I suppose a lot of people think, oh well, what's talking about it going to do? It's not going to make any difference, is it? It still happened. But actually it makes an enormous amount of difference if you're really willing to be honest and talk about things. But yeah, that was an amazing kind of thing to see a guy that old, kind of, I mean, it's not that old, but you know, he was in his, you know, later years, and you know, his life was completely transformed at that point onwards. So yeah, you can get moments like that where it's just it makes it all worthwhile, kind of thing.
Have you ever experienced the opposite of that, where it's just really hard to help somebody move forward and get people to open up?
Yeah, it can be very frustrating at times when you can see, you know, there's no movement. I suppose what's difficult is really just acknowledging that as a counsellor and just saying, I can see that we're in a, you know, we've hit a brick wall here, kind of thing. We're feeling really stuck, and that's what you have to do, really, just reflect that back to the client, and it's really from there, acknowledging where you are in the relationship or in the work is the only way you can move forward. You know, there's a temptation to sort of not want to really face it, or like, but as the counsellor, you really need to do that. You know, you need to acknowledge it and reflect it back to the client and just say, I'm feeling a bit frustrated here with this because we're stuck in a place where. But yeah, there's definitely times where it's not as transformative, and that's just up to the client's process. Maybe they're not in the right place at that time to actually move forward, or yeah, like it's too difficult for them to talk about something, and they don't want to.
And is it the service? Is it self-referral, or do they get referred to you through the NHS, like through the GP or something?
Yeah, it's both. So they can refer themselves, or they can be referred by GP, or any other healthcare professional, or even other sort of services and charities across Manchester. I'd say the majority of the referrals we get are from GPs. Okay. That's a bit of a stab in the dark, but I'm pretty sure that's the bit.
Yeah, you probably don't see that before process, do you? You just kind of get given a client and away you go.
Yeah, exactly. But just thinking about the assessments I've done, I'd say most of them come from a GP.
Right, interesting. I wanted to ask you about Speak Up Challenge, because obviously we kind of just bumped into each other on that a couple of years ago, didn't we, without knowing that either of us were going on it. Was that something that because if I remember rightly, you chose to do that for yourself, but kind of to help you with work as well. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I mean, that was almost entirely just, right, this is something I really fear, public speaking. I'm just going to do it as a, I became really obsessed with facing my fears, I suppose. And this opportunity came up. I don't know where. I think I went to, like, they had a little sort of introductory talks, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did a free session or something.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just, it wasn't anything to do with my job at all, really. It was just like, do it for myself, you know, for facing my own fears. And during that, I actually talked about kind of it was about you know, not staying in your comfort zone, like trying to push yourself, and finding a place where actually that's a rewarding thing to do. So yeah, that was when was that? Like about 2 years ago now.
2018, I think. Like, yeah. January, February, March of start of 2018. Yeah.
seems like a long time ago. I almost forget about it, but it was an amazing experience. So nervous though when I did the talk, like just insanely nervous.
Yeah. To be fair, I think most people are. It's like one of the most common fears that everybody has, isn't it? Like speaking in front of people. And I think I
Yeah.
was similar to you in the sense that it wasn't something I was afraid of, but it was something I wanted to get better at. And it was something that,
Mhm.
I'd done as a football coach. Like I'd stood in front of groups and talked a lot, but I'd never actually sort of written a speech out and actually delivered that. So I thought, that's something I want to learn. And I really enjoyed that process. I thought it was a really amazing experience. And I went back, I think about 6 months after we'd done it, just to watch another group and just listen and, try and
Right.
pick up some tips and stuff. Because I remember, I think I sent you a picture, didn't I? Because you were on the, you were on they give out a program or something, and you were on the.
Was I on the alumni? Um, yeah, no, I don't know. It was an amazing experience, though. I'm just, yeah, like just thinking about it. I'm surprised I did that. Like, I'm almost like, why on earth did I do it? Because there was no sort of professional reward from doing it or anything. It was literally just because it was, it cost money as well. It wasn't free. But I'm glad I did it because it was an amazing experience. Yeah, and again, it's one of them uh, things like I can say I've done. I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and nobody can take that certificate away from you now that you've done it. And you said there, like that was part of your process of sort of facing your fears. Was there any other fears that you faced in and around that time that you want to kind of talk about?
Yeah, I said that and then realised that was probably the only one. I don't know why yeah, I wasn't doing bungee jumps or anything like that around the same time. It was just no, I like yeah, I was definitely trying to push myself. I think I meant more like I was trying to push myself out of my comfort zone a bit, and I knew that was definitely something that would be out of my comfort zone. So yeah, it was just part of like that process really, and I'm definitely glad I did it.
Yeah, no, it was good. I enjoyed it too. Is there any fear that you've got that you would just never even consider taking on?
Um, I don't know really. Like I probably, I do. Like I just mentioned bungee jumping. I definitely do that kind of thing. I wouldn't. I don't think I'd be scared to do that. Probably like that was probably my biggest fear. Maybe talking in front of a big crowd. It wasn't that big a crowd actually, but they said it was going to
People.
be. So yeah, like that. No, I would say that was definitely my biggest fear because, like I say, suffered from social anxiety. So for someone who suffered from social anxiety, that's almost like the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's why I did it really because I knew. I always come back to like this quote from Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, and he said, "That which you most need will be found where you least want to look." And that really sums up kind of facing anxiety disorders and stuff. If you want to get over these disorders, you really need to face what it is that you're afraid of, right in the face. And I suppose I was just reading a lot of that around that time, and probably influenced by that.
Did any of that fall into your philosophy degree as well?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's another thing. Like, I did a philosophy degree, but I wouldn't say I was that interested in it at the time. But like since then, certainly in the past sort of 5 years, I've become incredibly interested in philosophy, especially ancient Greek philosophy, like Stoicism in particular. So yeah, like it's funny that I did a degree in it because I was just doing it for the sake of doing a degree at the time. But now I would love to do a degree in it now because I'm actually genuinely interested in it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually what made you do the degree in philosophy in the first place, but you kind of just beat me to the answer.
Well, it was kind of strange my university thing because I started doing history at Lancaster University. Then I ended up leaving Lancaster and going to UCLan in Preston. And because I'd done a module in philosophy at Lancaster, I could carry on doing the philosophy degree. But I wouldn't be able to tell you what actually made me choose that particular subject at the time. Just arbitrarily, like I just thought, it's something to do. Like I wasn't any particular interest in it, I don't think.
Yeah, a bit of youthful naivety and just looking for something different that you'd not done before, probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think I knew a guy that was doing it. Like I knew a guy that was on that. So that was probably the main influence.
Yeah, if in doubt, follow someone else and figure it out later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you just? I was gonna when you were talking about the public speaking and the social anxiety and stuff. Do you remember in school when we had to like get up and do a presentation? I don't know, for let's say, I don't know, English, or you had to read something out loud in class. Do you remember doing that? Did you ever have to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember one occasion actually where that I suddenly realised how difficult that was, and I don't think I was prepared for it, because I remember probably in year 7 I actually quite liked doing that kind of thing. So something happened in that time which then like sort of made it become more difficult. But it was probably year 9 or something. I remember standing up and then realising, oh my god, I'm incredibly nervous. It was like I didn't realise until I was actually stood up there.
Yeah.
And I remember like really struggling. I can't remember it that well. I remember like people were laughing as well. I'm not going to name names, but there were people that were laughing, and like I just remember that being a particularly harrowing experience. And I'm sure it is for like most. I'm sure a lot of children have a similar experience to that.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because I remember at BTH, I'm not going to name the teacher or the student or whatever, but I remember being in a lesson one day and the teacher asked one of the lads to read, and he didn't want to read. He just said, "No, I don't want to," because he probably either was nervous or he wasn't a good reader or he just didn't want to do it in front of everybody else. And I remember the teacher literally said, "We're not doing anything else until you read." And I remember to this day thinking, that's really awkward. You know, everyone's kind of like looking at this kid who doesn't want to read, and the teacher's refusing to carry on with the lesson until he actually
It
does.
wasn't me, was it?
No, it definitely wasn't you. No, it wasn't you. And if it was, I wouldn't have told the story. I remember who it was, but I'm not going to name him because he might see this, and I don't want him to feel awkward.
Yeah. But that actually makes me a little bit angry, because the teacher shouldn't be doing that at all. Like I don't understand how that is in any way helping that kid. I mean, I don't know who it is, but I'd imagine that would really knock someone's confidence.
And like you said, you know, when you were reading, people were laughing. Like you never know what they're laughing at. Are they laughing at you? Are they laughing at something else that's going on? And it can be awful because I guess then if that's your first experience of speaking in front of people, you just associate people laughing at you when you're presenting. So that's something that I think a lot of people probably carry over, you know, into their life as well. Like you said about the guy before, you know, he just held on to that pain for so long and he didn't really release it for 60, 50 years, something like that.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it was really quite terrible, the abuse he'd received, and I mean, it was just he he actually wrote a letter at the end of the therapy, you know, thanking me for because when he came in, he was a big guy, like you know, I don't want to say too much, but he was a big guy, and he tough, like he'd worked, you know, he'd worked security and that kind of thing. He was a big guy, and he he was like shaking, you know, and just to see somebody like that in that kind of state, it was pretty shocking, really. And I was only training at the time; it was fairly early on in my journey, really. And he said to me at the end, he said I was going to walk out because of how he felt when he came into the room. But he said there was something about the way you were, like you didn't look shocked, or you didn't look. There's something about my sort of deadpan sort of tone, I think, made him sort of stay, or made it, and that just made me think like, oh, maybe, you know, that could be the same for other clients as well. There's something about my persona or something that might make it easier for these people to open up, and that would make me think, you know, I'm in the right sort of profession, I guess.
Yeah, because I mean, you're very laid back, aren't you? And I guess, you know, that what he felt from you is something that you can't really teach. That's just you as a person, and that's just your sort of, I guess, one of your personality traits of how you deal with people. And you were, I guess, very non-judgmental, I guess would be the best way to describe it. You know, you're there to support and not to kind of make them feel awkward.
Yeah, definitely. But it's interesting because when he said that I looked, you know, deadpan, or that I didn't look sort of shaken or by what I was seeing or what I was hearing, because he was talking about this abuse. but inside is a completely different story. Like I might not be showing it in any way in my expression or whatever, but you can be feeling incredibly tense or incredibly like shocked, or you just have to be able to hold that, like not if you display that to the client, they'll immediately shut down because they'll think, oh no, I better not say anything else, kind of thing. So yeah, I think, like you say, I think it's just natural, like a personality trait which lends itself to that work. So maybe I have gone into the right line of work, kind of thing.
No, it sounds like you have. I was going to ask you just kind of one of my last questions on based on what you were saying there. As a counsellor, you must hear a lot of stuff that must be difficult to listen to. Is there then a place for people like yourself to go and have conversations with other counsellors, based on what you're hearing from clients and stuff, and a way for you to kind of express how you're processing what they're telling you?
Yeah, so yeah, we have clinical supervision, it's called. So we speak to a clinical supervisor every month for about an hour and a half, and we bring anything that we have found difficult in our client work to that person and talk about it there. That's a place to process it. If anything kind of comes up for me, from what people are saying, then it's my responsibility to get personal therapy to deal with that. That's not really something that a clinical supervisor would deal with. A clinical supervisor is there to make sure you're fit to practice, and that you're working in a way that is suitable for the clients, really, like that you're not showing any signs of that you're really struggling, perhaps. So so in terms of the place, I mean, I can talk to other counsellors. We also have peer supervision, with other counsellors, which is basically just a place to, like talk about any client issues that have come up or any personal issues that we're having, perhaps. So yeah, there's definitely spaces like that in the work where we can do that, and they are kind of invaluable, to be honest, because like you say, you can be having to hold on to quite a lot of difficult stuff that people bring. I tend to be able to switch off from it though afterwards. Like I don't carry other people's stuff with me. I'm not sat around thinking about what people have told me all evening or anything like that. But you really have to be very, very boundaried as a counsellor in order to not let that happen, because if you become too emotionally affected or involved, then it can be a very difficult job to do. I mean, it's already quite difficult as it is, but it can become like very overwhelming, I suppose, and yeah, particularly hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I guess last question then for you, when you're having a bit of a long day or you're a bit flat or whatever, what do you do to kind of just keep yourself motivated, ticking over, mentally strong?
Well, I've been I wasn't going to talk about this, but I've been writing some music during the lockdown. I've got some recording equipment. I played the guitar since I was at college, at university, and I got some like recording software at the start. I think it was like May or something. So I've started writing some songs which I've been working on. So as soon as work finishes, I've tended to just go start doing that. But it's really been helpful to me in terms of like sort of switching off from the sort of counsellor role, maybe. And just other usual stuff like exercise, and I do a lot of meditation as well every morning.
Nice. Well, mate, I really appreciate you spending the time to just sit and kind of divulge a little bit, and being.
No, it's been really interesting, Joe. Yeah, it's interesting, like you say, the crossover between the coaching and counselling, because I always see coaching as a type of, I suppose, talking therapy as well, because you're doing that sort of one-to-one work. I don't know if you see it that way, but like it's always struck me as being, and goals, like you were saying, is a big thing in counselling. You need to set goals, and that's obviously part of the coaching.
It is. It's interesting when talking to other coaches and then talking to people like yourself who do counselling or different types of therapy, and very often common words come up, like you said before, about reflecting back and setting goals and having something to work towards. And kind of facilitating that conversation and asking questions. And there is a lot of commonality between these kinds of things, and there are differences as well. But I just find it really interesting how a lot of the stuff that you're saying about that you do through counseling, I'm thinking, yeah, that kind of does tie in some way, shape, or form to one-to-one coaching. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting. But there is differences, and the outcomes and the way of getting them are always different. But I think it's super important what you do, because it gives people a space to just go and talk in a very non-judgmental one-to-one environment, which I think is very, very important, because I don't think, like you said, people holding on to stuff from their past and not verbalizing it is never a good thing, really, because it only leads to, I guess, more difficulty down the road. So I think what you're doing is amazing. I think you've gone on that long journey of training and gone through your marine your break down, build him up again. So I think, no, mate, I really appreciate you coming on and talking openly and honest about your struggles and everything that you're doing to help others as well.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, Joe. It's been an enjoyable conversation, definitely. But cheers for having me on.
As always, thanks again, Pat. I really appreciate it.
All right, Joe. Yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot, mate.
Mate.
See you now.